David, first off, congratulations, 400 games, a marvellous effort. Coaching?
Yeah, I suppose when you play, Malcolm, you probably think about milestones a bit more than you do as coach, but to think you survived twice as long as a coach than you have as a player, that is a bit unique, I think.
36 years in top level football. It's an amazing record. Over 200 games played. Well, captain, premiership side, coach premiership sides.
I've been very fortunate, Malcolm, that I went to Hawthorn at the end of 1960, and they in fact won their first premiership, manager being absorbed into a club that were hell-bent and totally committed to getting their first premiership done. And I was just absorbed into that fierce competitive culture that was John Kennedy's in those days, and that was my, I guess, nurturing in football, and that sort of background. I guess you have to turn out to be the kind of competitive person you are with those sorts of influences. But I've been very fortunate because I think I've been involved in premierships in each of the decades as a player and as a coach, and been through probably the greatest change that Australian football's ever likely to see. I mean, I think there are more changes, but they couldn't have come as rapidly as they have in the last 20 or 30 years. So it's been a very exciting time, and I mean, you've been a part of it for a long time too, and you know the sorts of people you meet and the sorts of challenges that are put before you. It makes life pretty stimulating.
Is there one favourite time in your career? I know that you've just come off a premiership win again, but is there a favourite premiership or a favourite year?
I think, Malcolm, that playing is better than coaching in terms of that, and I think you've been through all that too. It's just that you have some actual control. You think you really have contributed when you're out there as a player, and I think in 1971, when I had the privilege of actually captaining that team, we got to three-quarter time. Even the coach had given up on us, and to have a comeback, it's probably a bit unfair to John, but he did say if we're going to go down, at least go down in style. And I remember Don Scott regrouping the team, wasn't me as captain, and Scotty said, "What are you talking about going down? We'll win this." And he said it in such a way, I think he convinced the lot that we could, particularly Bob Keddy. I think he kicked 4 in the last quarter, and it was a remarkable win from where we were. And I think when you're captain in those circumstances, that will live in my memory till my death.
I remember you saying when you first came back to Carlton, you said that this is actually going to be a rebuilding, and you've done it. I mean, this is slightly different, isn't it?
It is different, Malcolm, and I think there's a realisation now amongst the smart clubs that it can't, wherever you are and wherever you've gone to on the ladder, whether it's just outside the finals or well down, it's all, the system doesn't really allow you to get up as quickly as that. And if your goals are short term, that is, we must get up this year and win it this year or make the finals this year, then that's certain failure, in my opinion. I mean, you've got to have your short-term goals in terms of who we're going to recruit now and have a look at our profile. I think that's absolutely critical. Get excellent staff into place, because I don't think the rest happens unless you've got the people off-field who are directing it. And then you need a bit of time. And we actually, I thought we'd gone beyond our time. I thought I was given a 4-year contract originally, and I must admit I went to the committee and I apologised for having let them down and virtually walked out at the end of 94. Now, for whatever reason, you'd have to ask them, they decided to give me a 1-year extension. So the 4 did become 5, and I think we appointed a couple of smart people, and we made a couple of decisions, particularly in terms of player empowerment, and we were lucky enough to be able to get the job done in the 5th year. We were in a position to do it before, and I can be quite truthful, and we failed on both occasions, but still had enough energy or whatever it was to bring about the so-called 5-year plan, which it was.
It takes some strength of character from the coach and the people around you to say, well, look, that player is a premiership player, or those 2 players are a premiership player, but they're really not part of our plans. We have to look for continual improvement. We think that they perhaps won't last. It takes a lot of courage to do that, David.
Well, it's easy to say it as long as you don't name the individual. All I say is one of you blokes, and there's a bit of apprehension here because they know the coach is committed to change, and I really am. I'm not just saying it. We'll have, in the first game up, we'll have 3 or 4 or 5 different players by the time we hit the ground on Sunday, and it's not necessarily a deliberate ploy to isolate individuals and say they're not up to the standard, but some people aren't going to be able to maintain the pace, what we're asking, and we've got other people, and we've deliberately recruited other people who we think are ready, hungry in that they haven't been there, good in that they'll add a dimension to our team. They're different to what we've got, and we're really encouraging in this stage, more so than some that have been around the edges for a while, we're really encouraging them to be in and picking them maybe ahead of some of the others to give them the best possible chance of succeeding. They may fall by the wayside, but we're hoping they'll succeed because that's part of our plan in our profile.
You've been involved in footy in over 600 games now as a player and coach. Do you have any favourite player or players?
Yeah, look, it's difficult because I've coached so many over the years now in so many different clubs at different times. That gets a bit difficult. I'd have to say the best player I ever saw and played with was Ted Whitten, without doubt. I thought that, I mean, he was tough in the right sense of the word, but he could do all the things the little blokes could do. He could do all the things the big blokes could do. He could play at both ends of the ground, and he was totally inspirational. He had this phenomenal belief. I played against him and was humiliated and humbled, and I played with him in state sides, and I thought that he was just a total inspiration. But I've just had, and particularly leadership, you think of Sticks now, I mean, the great leaders, Fitzpatrick I've had, and Johnson here, and Matthews and Scott.
Great names.
I mean, yeah, and they've been terrific, not only terrific players, but fabulous people within those institutions at that time, made far greater contribution than just going out and playing.
Interesting too, all of them were premiership captains, players, some qualities.
Yeah, great qualities. And able to produce. The great thing about the Fitzpatrick and the Johnsons and the Scotts and that, they played their best footy when it was most required. Fitzy was an ordinary player in ordinary games, but by gee, he played well in each of the finals, and his best performances always kept to the grand final.
As you come up to your 400th game, you're up against a guy, Tony Shaw, who's doing his first game. Can you remember your first game?
Yeah, I do. And it was almost in identical circumstances to Tony, and that I'd come back after having been assistant coach to coach the players whom I had played with myself. I think that's a very tough assignment.
But you had been to Subiaco before.
I had 12 months, that's quite true, and that was very helpful because we lost almost every game. You lose a lot more when you're losing than I think you do when you're winning. And that was good. I had been away for a short period of time. I think maybe it's something that Anthony probably did consider, Tony Shaw considered. I mean, he had the opportunity to come here, in fact, but chose not to. There may be advantages and disadvantages, and I'm not really sure, but I remember it, and if you tuck on it, I had a premiership side. I actually walked into 77 was my first game, first round 77, and they won the premiership in 76. High expectations, but not a bad team. I mucked it up. You both won in 77, and we failed to get there. And but we were up again in 78 and won a premiership. But that team had also been in the grand final against North in 75, so it was a very competent team.
Do you remember the score on that game? The first game?
No, I can't actually.
I actually looked it up.
You ask me that. You look it up. What was the score?
It was North Melbourne, 23-14 to Hawthorn, 13-14.
Wasn't a good start, was it? And I couldn't have told that. I couldn't have even. That's how big my ego is. I couldn't even tell you we lost.
Just, I mean, Carlton versus Collingwood. I mean, traditionally, and it doesn't seem to be abating.
No, and it isn't. And I wasn't aware, having come from as an outsider, that you aren't aware, but it affects everybody here. They become quite strange and different. And I think, without the other side of the fence, that happens in the other places as well. And we always have great contests. Doesn't matter when we play or where we play, what the comparative positions on the ladder and the expectations of the team are, that are all going to be on again on Sunday. I'll be very thankful to get home by a point.
Will you think we'll see something different with Tony Shaw coaching Collingwood?
I think a little bit. The game plan doesn't appear to be all that much different at this stage to Lee, and it takes some while to actually, I think, put your imprint on it. But I think Lee and Tony have a lot in common as the way they played. You know, their competitiveness, I guess, is very strong, but Tony probably got more out of less, in a real sense. And I guess he'll coach that way, and I know he is coaching that way. They've worked harder and longer and stronger than any other club in the pre-season period, and they'll be an absolute tough nut, I know, every week to get over. They'll be a very, very competitive side in 96, I know that.